How we doing, fight fans? It's good to see you all. Thank you for tuning in. As always, we've got a really exciting card coming to you live this Saturday, October 5th, out of the Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia, headlined by Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya. Really looking forward to this one. If you haven't checked out my first video yet, please go do so. On that video, I cover the majority of the fights on the main card of UFC 243. During this video, this is going to be specifically focused on the middleweight championship fight between Robert the Reaper Whittaker and Israel the Last Stylebender Adesanya. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. If you like what you see, give me a thumbs up and engage down below in the comments, and I'll be sure to write you guys back. So, getting right into this middleweight championship of the world. The champion versus the interim champion. Betting odds for this fight. So this is actually a pick'em. Yesterday on Monday, I saw some bookies who had Robert Whittaker as a very, very slight favorite. And actually today I'm seeing Israel Adesanya as a very slight favorite. But for the most part, this fight is a pick'em. A little bit of background on these guys. So Robert Whittaker was actually born in New Zealand. Very shortly after his birth, I think within the first couple of weeks, his dad had him on a plane to Australia, where he's grown up ever since. So he's 28 years old, 6 feet tall, 73.5-inch reach, 20-4 MMA record, and he's on a 9-fight win streak. So early on in Robert's career, about when he was 6 years old, he actually was enrolled in a karate school, and he's been competing in combat sports ever since. So he's got a black belt in karate, a black belt in Hapkido, and he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Robert Whittaker is a true champion, one of the most well-rounded fighters, I think, in all of the UFC in any division. And he's just an incredible human being with a real warrior, fighter, work ethic, and spirit to him. I really love this guy. I think he's a great middleweight champion. He is overcoming, though, an abdominal hernia, which, as I'm sure you all know, forced him to pull out of his previously scheduled matchup with Kelvin Gastelum. So I'm really hoping that Robert has made a sound recovery, a healthy recovery. I'm hoping he didn't rush anything. I'm hoping he is 100% going into this fight on Saturday night. And according to Robert, he is. He said he feels better than he ever has. He feels stronger than he ever has, in better shape than he's ever been. And I'm really hoping that's the case, because he's going to need it on Saturday night against Israel, the Last Stylebender Adesanya. Israel is 30 years old. He's a Nigerian New Zealander kickboxer and boxer. He's 6'4" tall with an 80-inch reach. So in this fight, Israel is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage, a 6.5-inch reach advantage, and a 4-inch height advantage. Israel is undefeated. He is 17-0 in his MMA career with 13 knockouts, many of which have come within the first 2 rounds. After knocking out his first 11 opponents in a row, though, prior to the UFC, he entered the promotion within the UFC, and since joining has only knocked out 2 out of 6 opponents. In Israel's last 5 fights, he's gone to decision 4 times. One of those decisions was a split decision. Another one of those decisions was a unanimous, but it was to Kelvin Gastelum, who got this close to getting the finish in the 3rd or 4th round. I can't remember off the top of my head. So, is Israel Adesanya as invincible as some may say? We will certainly find out Saturday night when he faces off against one of the best middleweights to ever do it, in my opinion, in Robert Whittaker. So let's take a look at the striking. This is where the fight is going to be won or lost. As Uncle Chael said on a video, I'm not sure if you guys caught it, on a video on a plane yesterday, Robert and Israel are both talking about how they are the best kickboxer in the division. They're not talking about I'm going to win because I'm the best mixed martial artist. They keep talking about kickboxing. And so what's really interesting is we don't really know at this point. Israel Adesanya, we don't really know who's the better kickboxer. Israel Adesanya has the history in kickboxing, the pedigree, the championships, the trophies. But Robert Whittaker, within mixed martial arts, utilizes kickboxing better than anybody. He's at least in the tier 1 of kickboxers in all of UFC. And so going into this matchup, I'm actually having a hard time deciphering who I think is the superior kickboxer. Is it the one with the pedigree and the trophies, or is it the one who's been able to really, truly translate it, not that Israel hasn't, but really well within mixed martial arts? It'll be interesting to see. But let's take a look at the statistics and see if that gives us any indicators as to who may be the superior kickboxer heading into Saturday night. Israel Adesanya lands 4.47 significant strikes per minute. Robert Whittaker lands 4.82 significant strikes per minute. Advantage Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker is number 5 all time in significant strikes landed per minute in the middleweight division at 5. Advantage Robert Whittaker. Robert knocks out 45% of his opponents. Israel Adesanya knocks out 76% of his opponents. Advantage Israel. Also, Israel, in just 6 fights in the UFC, is already number 5 all time in knockdowns scored in the middleweight division at 8. Robert has 5. KO advantages Israel. Defensively, Israel Adesanya absorbs only 2.07 significant strikes per minute. Israel is number 3 all time for significant strike defense in the middleweight division at 65.7%. Robert's not far behind at 61%, but defensively, advantage Israel. So, what does that tell us? Those statistics, I think, communicate, at least to me, that Robert Whittaker has a higher output, a more aggressive pace and volume of strikes thrown. He also lands more, so it's not just how much he's throwing, it's how much he's landing. So he throws more and he lands more than Israel. But Israel seems to pick his shots better. With Israel's knockout capabilities, his knockdown capabilities, and his defense, it seems that Israel picks his shots better and avoids getting hit more. So, Robert Whittaker advantage, volume, pace, strikes landed. Israel advantage, tactical, picking shots, knockouts, and defense. Really interesting. So, next thing I think we should look at is where do they strike? So it's not just how much you strike and how often you hit and how often you avoid getting hit, but where are these strikes being thrown? So Robert Whittaker, 70% of his strikes are targeted to the head. Israel Adesanya, 53% of his strikes targeted to the head. Drastic difference there. What does that mean? Well, it means that to the body and to the legs, Robert Whittaker targets those areas below the neck 30% of the time. Still good. I like that ratio, 7-3. But Israel Adesanya, 47% of the time he's targeting the body or the legs. All right, it's almost 50-50. So Israel Adesanya mixes it up very, very well. Now, it's great if you're mixing it up, but the most important thing is that you're hurting your opponent and you're inflicting damage. If you're a point scorer, what matters is how often you're hitting the opponent's body, how often you're connecting with significant strikes. But I think if we're going for finishes here, it's not so much where you hit them, it's how you hurt them. And so I think there's a lot to look at within these statistics, but I think what matters most here is after we look at these statistics, we apply the eye test, right? What's my eye test telling me? When I watch Robert fight and when I watch Israel fight, I have to give the output and aggression advantage to Robert Whittaker. Israel's a killer, but Robert's got something in his eyes where he wants to crush you, and he's going to move forward with his cardio and pace, with his pressure and with his volume. He's going to hurt his opponent, right? So my eye test is telling me Robert Whittaker has the advantage from an output, aggression, cardio, pace standpoint. It's simply, I think, in my opinion, superior to Israel Adesanya's. Robert is going to have to do a lot of what Kelvin did in Kelvin's fight, which was move forward, get in Israel's face, make him uncomfortable, and inflict damage. So what else does the eye test tell me? Well, it tells me that Israel Adesanya is slicker, has more knockout power, can hurt you from more places. He can hurt you from different angles, and he has excellent defense. We also learned in the Kelvin fight that he's got a chin too. We never really saw Israel tested like we did in the Kelvin fight, and he answered those questions. Can he go 5 rounds? Yes. Can he take a punch? Yes. So my eye test is telling me, although Robert gets pace, pressure, aggression, Israel gets the nod to knockouts, defense, and style points. So Israel hits you from these different angles, right? Luke Thomas put out a great video yesterday or the day before about Israel and his feints and how he uses feints extremely well to take the fight to control the fight, the pace of the fight, okay, to control distance, to move in and out, and to back people up against the fence, okay, to confuse you, to get you off your game plan, and to fight within his game plan. Luke Thomas also did an excellent job explaining how to counter that. You need to pressure forward. You need to get in Israel Adesanya's face, or anybody who's a feinter. You need to move forward, get in their face, push them back, and inflict damage, of course. Kelvin was able to do that quite a bit in the fight against Israel, and Robert Whittaker is going to have to do the same thing on Saturday night. Robert Whittaker has said, though, that's part of his game plan, and I was really excited to hear that. I kind of assumed that was going to be his game plan. That's just kind of how he fights. But hearing him say that I am going to give Israel a pace and pressure that he hasn't seen before, that's how Robert's going to win the stand-up battle in this fight. But Robert's got to be very careful against Israel Adesanya because as he's backing up, he will catch you with different angles, elbows, knees, and toes. And he'll put you on the canvas before you know it. So as Robert's doing this, he needs to be sure that his head is off center and he's always moving, right? He's never on the center line. Otherwise, Israel's going to put him down. He needs to keep his hands up too. He can't be hands low, swinging swinging from his waist, hands up, moving off the center line, moving forward. But boy, that being said, looking at the statistics and my eye test, I don't know who the better striker is going into this fight. We will find out on Saturday night. And I know you all probably have your opinions. I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to say that Israel Adesanya is obviously the better striker, Duncan. Well, I'd say we don't know that yet. Look back to what Israel Adesanya did leading into the UFC. 11 knockouts and 11 fights. Wow. One of the best strikers we've ever seen. Anderson Silva 2.0 type of talk. Okay, slow down. Since joining the UFC, Israel Adesanya in 6 fights has only finished 2 of them. Okay, in his last 5 fights, he's gone to the decision 4 times. One of those split, one of those were really close unanimous decisions. So, since his caliber of competition has significantly increased in the UFC, his finish rates have significantly decreased. All right, so we're not sure that Israel Adesanya can quite live up to the hype that I think a lot of us have given him. He might, and the sky's the limit with this kid, but we have yet to see. He has yet to face somebody like Robert Whittaker. Let's take a look at grappling real quick. Although Robert can stand with anyone on the feet, This is an area, grappling, wrestling, submissions, where I think this is his safest pathway to victory against Israel Adesanya. What a lot of people don't know about Robert is in 2015, he entered an amateur freestyle national wrestling tournament in Australia. He won all 3 of his bouts. He started to kick fucking ass in wrestling. In 2017, he entered more national tournaments. Let me go back real quick. It was in the Australia Cup tournament where he won all 3 bouts in 2015. It was there that he flagged the possibility of representing Australia on the national and international stage. In 2017, he competed some more and claimed another gold medal at the Australian National Wrestling Championships in the 213-pound division. After that, he entered the Commonwealth Games and again took home first place and qualified to officially represent Australia on the national and international scene. Robert Whittaker is one hell of a wrestler. We saw him fight Yoel Romero for 50 minutes. Yoel Romero, one of the best wrestlers we've ever seen in the octagon. He was able to fight with him for 50 minutes and get his hand raised twice. I say all this to say that he's got hella good takedowns, hella good takedown defense. And when you combine his wrestling skills with a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that is a weapon on the ground. That is his safest pathway to victory against somebody as dangerous as Israel Adesanya, is not getting in an ego battle and saying, I'm the best kickboxer. No, I'm the best kickboxer. And just duking it out on the feet for 25 minutes. In my opinion, part of Robert Whittaker's game plan should be, I'm not going to say it must be, because he might be a better kickboxer than Israel. It should be, though, to at least in 1, 2, or 3 of these rounds, go for a takedown and see if you can't find some success on the mat. Israel Adesanya, though, that's easier said than done because Israel Adesanya has an 85.7% takedown defense rate, which is incredible, guys. And he's also faced really good wrestlers like Kelvin Gastelum, like Derek Brunson. Over 85% takedown defense rate is incredible. So it's much easier said than done for Robert, but he is one hell of a wrestler, one hell of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu expert. You combine the two, it's a lethal weapon on the ground. I'd like to see him try it out. That said, I don't think it'll happen. I mentioned Uncle Chael's talk about Robert and Israel. I'm the best kickboxer. We'll find out on Saturday night. I think that these guys are going to stay standing for the entire duration of this bout. Whether it ends in the first round or it goes all 5 rounds, I think these guys stay standing. So my prediction for this fight: Israel Adesanya is wildly talented. All right, truly a phenomenon. The sky's the limit with this guy. Anderson Silva 2.0 type, unbelievable potential for Israel Adesanya. I just don't think he's there quite yet. I mentioned how we've seen his performances sort of not be quite as impressive in the UFC than we saw him on more of the regional stage prior to the UFC. The level of competition Israel Adesanya has faced is not anywhere near the level that Robert Whittaker, the gauntlet that Robert Whittaker has gone on over the course of his 9 wins in a row, and even prior to that, he was in the UFC. I don't believe that we've seen Israel face. He hasn't faced anybody to the level of Robert Whittaker. I just think so it's not so much Israel's not ready yet either. I don't think he's reached his full potential. I don't think a lot of you guys think that either. I think Israel's still growing. And I think that one day he will be the middleweight champion. So it's not so much any lack of skill, lack of experience for Israel. I apologize if I sound like I've been focusing on that. The real thing I want to focus on here is I think Robert Whittaker is the best middleweight on the planet right now. I think Robert Whittaker is one of the best middleweights we've ever seen in the UFC. He's still young. He's younger than Israel Adesanya. So he's still got a ton of room to grow, to put more names, to etch more names in stone on his resume, and to build on Robert's legacy. The sky's the limit for this guy. But so far, from what we've seen in his body of work, I think he's one of the best middleweights we've ever seen. And he's still getting better too. And I just don't see Israel Adesanya stepping into the cage, stepping into the octagon with Robert Whittaker on Saturday night and coming out with the victory. I think he can do it. He has the skills to do it. Robert needs to be careful, otherwise he might get put out. But I just think that Robert Whittaker's fighting spirit is second to none. His durability and his chin is second to none. His cardio is second to none. And his endurance, his skills, wherever the fight takes him, standing with kickboxing and boxing and in the clinch and on the ground with his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu, Robert Whittaker is extremely well-rounded. Much more well-rounded than Israel Adesanya. Israel on the feet, deadly force. Israel on the ground, we don't know. So I just think that Robert Whittaker is the true middleweight king right now. And until somebody goes in there and beats him, I'm not picking against him. I think in front of 60,000 people at Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia, I think in championship rounds, Robert Whittaker gets it done. 4th round, TKO, Robert Whittaker calling it here. Looking at the betting line though, one thing I'm doing, if you check out my first video, one thing I'm really trying to do here is not just give you my prediction on who I think is going to win the fight, but give you my advice if you're a betting man looking at the lines here. This one being a pick'em, my advice here is to stay away from the fight. Either of these guys can win. All right, if you pick against Israel, you're like, what are you thinking? The guy's undefeated. If you pick against Robert Whittaker, what are you thinking? The guy's won 9 in a row and he's the middleweight champ right now. Nobody's he's been tested by Yoel. Questionable fight, shouldn't have said that maybe, but Robert Whittaker is the king right now. All right, so if you pick against that guy, what's wrong with you? I'd steer clear of this fight when it comes to putting money down. All right, given the lines, if either one of these was an underdog, I'd tell you to pick the underdog. Either one of them. If Robert was an underdog, I'd say pick him. If Israel was an underdog, I'd say put your money on him, because I like those odds. I think these guys are so evenly matched that if there is one who's an underdog, I think there's money to be made there. I think there's a gap. So I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the content here today. As I said, if you haven't seen it already, check out part 1, where I cover 3 more fights on the main card of UFC 243. Comment below. Most importantly, guys, comment below. Let me know who you think's going to win, Robert or Israel. And if you really want to, let me know your prediction as to how you think they're going to win and why that's the case. I always be sure to engage with as many of you as I can. So subscribe if you haven't already. Like if you liked what you saw. And thank you as always, guys. We'll see you next time.